Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 5th of June. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open with the controversy over the decision by the Orange French telecommunications operator to end its brand licensing deal with the Israeli firm Partner Communications. Chief Executive Officer of the company, Stéphane Richard, today stressed that his intention to withdraw from the Israeli market was purely business-related and insisted that the decision was by no means politically motivated. In an exclusive interview with the Idiot Achronot Daily, Richard unequivocally denied that statements that he made earlier this week in Cairo about wanting to seize operations in Israel were related to the ongoing international campaign to boycott Israeli products. According to Richard, he wasn't even aware such efforts have been taking place. The French CEO then reiterated his support and friendship for the Jewish state and emphasized that the decision was merely in keeping with Orange policy of not maintaining a brand presence in nations where it's not an operator. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is demanding that not only Paris, but the international community at large publicly condemn the Orange decision to sever ties with Israel. Netanyahu branded the move by the partially French government-owned company as despicable and miserable, and said that he is calling on Israel's best friends to loudly proclaim their opposition to any sort of Israel bashing, while warning that this absurd drama will not be forgiven. Other Israeli officials are also speaking out against the move, which they accuse of being part of the global pro-Palestinian campaign against Israel. In an attempt to defuse the controversies surrounding the Orange decision, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius is stressing that his nation opposes any kind of boycott against the Jewish state. Fabius issued a statement reiterating his nation's staunch support of Israel, but went on to say that the president of the cell phone provider is free to define the company's policy, and that France's position, as well as that of the entire European Union, remains consistent with the view that Israeli settlement in occupied territory is illegal. According to Partner Communications CEO Chaim Romano, his company hasn't yet received official word from executives from Orange about the decision, but cautioned that the French operator will have to pay serious fines should it prematurely terminate the 10-year contract it just signed with his company. Romano also threatened legal action against Richard. "We are an Israeli company that provides service to everyone," Romano said, while expressing his confidence that the Israeli public will know how to tell the difference between Partner and Orange Israel, which is a separate company. Partner's U.S.-based majority shareholder Chaim Saban is accusing Orange of caving into pressure from a variety of anti-Semitic bodies. He went on to stress that it is important to identify those who encourage the boycott against Israel and act against them with full force. He also called for the public to embrace Partner and said that it is critical to maintain solidarity to defend those who may be harmed by this campaign. In other news, officials from Israel and Saudi Arabia have reportedly held 5 secret meetings since the beginning of 2014, despite the status of being historical enemies and the Saudi refusal to even recognize Israel's right to exist. Bloomberg News is reporting that the two nations are engaging in a campaign of clandestine diplomacy in efforts to thwart the increasing threat to the region posed by Iran. The Foreign Ministry's Director General-elect, Dori Gold, gave an address to the Council on Foreign Relations session in Washington yesterday, as did retired Saudi General Anwar Majid Eshki, who formerly served as Riyadh's ambassador to Washington and an advisor to Prince Bandar bin Sultan. The two men later even shook hands. Both expressed the hope that their states will be able to find common ground in the face of regional challenges, but clarified that they appeared at the conference as foreign policy experts rather than official representatives of their nations. The 5 bilateral talks were reportedly held over the last 17 months in India, Italy, and the Czech Republic. Meanwhile, a new poll of Saudi citizens, an Israeli college conducted by telephone, has concluded that the kingdom's public is far more concerned about threats from Iran and the Islamic State group than from Israel, and that the vast majority of Saudis support the decade-old peace initiative with the Jewish state. Joining me now in the studio to discuss this week's diplomatic and economic events is senior correspondent for Bloomberg Israel, Kalev Ben-David. Hi, Kalev. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure to be here, Erin, as always.
All right, let's start with the whole orange controversy. First of all, how hard of a financial punch has this decision to suspend operations to Israel been?
Look, on this specific decision, there's really no financial punch, or it's almost negligible. Some of the business press here has estimated that Orange is only paying something about 15 million shekel, about 4 million a year, to a partner is paying to Orange for that brand. That's really peanuts. Of course, any controversy of this type is not good for business, has the potential to discourage investment, and that particularly may be the case for Europeans who are dealing with a very vigorous BDS movement. So it certainly contributes to a negative atmosphere investment. However, a lot of the big investment now, more investment in Israel, is coming from other places, for example, China, India, the Far East, where BDS is not a factor. So economically, it's not so crucial.
Kalev, are you buying the company party line that this decision was in no way politically motivated?
No, I'm not. And I think the consequence, the seriousness of this is its political impact. First of all, I find the Orange CEO's claims, his sort of retraction today, to be very unconvincing. I mean, his comments were in Egypt were very clear that he wanted to pull out of Orange in order to maintain good relations with the Arab world. He claims he didn't know there was this campaign against his own company for its partnership with Orange, which is, I think, not believable, because there have been open demonstrations in Paris. There was one just last month at an annual meeting of Orange executives. In Egypt, where he was, there's a movement to boycott the Egyptian subsidy of Egypt Telecom of Orange. So I find that unconvincing. And remember, the important thing is here that Orange, 25% owned by the French government, at a time when the French government and the EU, the broader EU community, but mainly driven by the French government, is pressuring Israel on resuming the peace process with the Palestinians. We have this effort in the UN that the French want to bring to have the Security Council set a timetable. The French Foreign Minister, Laurent Fabius, is coming here later this month to push that. We've had the EU Foreign Ambassador, Federica Mogherini, here also recently talking about labeling of settlements, apparently, and warning Israel that that EU could issue new guidelines on this. So it all comes together. I think this was a message being sent through a very indirect and deniable way by the French government.
Let's talk about the BDS movement itself now. What do you make about the argument that there's no such thing as bad publicity? Therefore, all this fuss that's been in the media all week long only serves their purposes and possibly strengthens them by attracting even more haters.
Well, for a certain degree, that's true, and I think BDS does take that attitude, that any victory that they could claim, even sometimes I get notices in my mailbox from BDS movements claiming that this or that company is pulling out of Israel for political reasons, and then research shows that that is not the case, that there were other factors involved. So I think that is the attitude BDS takes. There is another side of it, though, that the more publicity you get, the more you get a countermeasure, more you get people coming out and supporting Israel, working against it. For instance, we mentioned Chaim Saban, who is has a controlling share and partner, the Israeli-American billionaire. He's now together with apparently other wealthy either Jewish Americans or supporters of Israel, putting together and contributing money for a counter-BDS movement. We have the Israeli government trying to set up new task force to try to deal with this issue. So the more publicity it gets, of course, that just generates more opposition against it. But clearly this is an issue that Israel has a right to be concerned with. And again, even if I don't think the impact really is in the economic level, because the investment will still be coming from other places, but it's on the political level and the ramifications it could have at places like the UN, for example. We discussed for example, this EU push for this new Security Council resolution.
Right. All right, let's talk about some other economic matters. Just briefly, let's talk about the warning that came this week from the Bank of Israel Governor Karnit Flug that demographic changes such as aging and the increase of the Arab and ultra-Orthodox populations threaten the country's long-term growth prospects. What do you make of that statement?
Well, listen, this is a theme that both Governor Flug and her predecessor, Stanley Fischer, did talk about, the fact that, especially in the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community, the workforce participation among men is something like 20% lower than the rest of the workforce. And at the same time, of course, a lot of that community gets government subsidies, so it's a drain on the country increasingly. But I think the timing of Flug's statement and how firm she was this time was significant, because this government, this new government, of course, sees the return of the ultra-Orthodox parties, Shas and United Torah Judaism, and is turning back on some of the reforms that were made by the last government under Finance Minister Yair Lapid. For example, increasing again the child allowance, which helps Haredi families with a lot of children, and gives them subsidies so that the father doesn't necessarily have to work. There's been talk about less enforcement of the core curriculum in education. This is crucial. Not making these yeshivot teach core English and mathematics. And I think that has it's a step backward, actually, from where we were going in the last couple of years. And I think Governor Flug is worried about it and is really sounding an alarm bell about that.
Interesting. Well, what do you make about this new committee that she also announced alongside the new Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon about ways to investigate concentration in the banking sector, how to increase competition?
Well,
is this superficial? Is this,
well,
or
we
is
have to explain
something really going to get done?
Well, you have to understand the background here. I mean, Moshe Kahlon, of course, made his name taking on the phone companies, the telecommunications companies, because people felt their fees were too high and were not competitive, and he had some success. What's another area, maybe a big area that Israelis complain about, is the whole banking sector. So this is people are in Israel, especially average Israelis, are very upset about the banking fees they have to pay. They have to pay the bank to take out their money, to write a check, to deposit money. And I think and Moshe Kahlon sees this as an area where he can make his next big step in terms of reforming the economy. But the banking sector falls generally under the authority, the oversight falls under the Bank of Israel, the supervisor of banks, who answers to Governor Karnit Flug. And she wants to be very careful that basically, if we're making the omelet, we don't break too many eggs, because keep in mind that in 2008, when the financial sectors all over the world, in the United States and Europe, banks were collapsing and the whole financial sector seemed to be going, in Israel, the banks stayed solid.
That's right.
And she wants to make sure that steps aren't taken. I think she agrees in principle the banks should be more competitive, more steps should be taken to make it easy for consumers, but she doesn't want it to go too far in the sense of making the financial sector unstable. Because it's one thing if one or two phone companies have financial troubles, have to lay off people, as we saw happen with some. And it's another if suddenly the banks get a little shaky. That affects the entire economy, and she wants to make sure that these reforms are done in the proper, responsible way.
Kalev, always good to have you with us. Thanks for your insight.
Pleasure as always, Aaron. Shabbat Shalom to you and all the viewers.
In other regional news, the United Nations will be forced to slash or shut down more than half of its aid operations in Iraq without an immediate injection of additional funds. That's the warning from the world body's humanitarian coordinator for Iraq during an event to launch an appeal from donors to contribute at least $490 million to pay for food, water, and shelter over the next 6 months for millions of Iraqis who are either forced from their homes or otherwise affected by fighting between Iraqi forces and the Islamic State. According to the Kurdistan Regional Government Minister for Planning, the situation is extremely dire.
The consequences can be not only humanitarian, but they can be political, and they can also complicate this situation and make any solution in the future much more complicated. So I believe that the cost of inaction for the international community and for the donor community can be much more than the cost of the action.
Australia has imposed financial sanctions on Neil Prakash. Its 23-year-old national, considered to be a high-profile recruiter for the Islamic State movement in Syria, as we hear in these statements from Canberra's Foreign Minister Julie Bishop to the country's parliament.
I have listed Australian national Neil Prakash, currently believed to be in Syria, for targeted financial sanctions. Prakash has sought to commission violent terrorist acts, including in Australia, and to recruit others, including young Australian women and girls, to travel to Syria and Iraq to join the Daesh terrorists. Prakash has incited vulnerable young people to commit violent extremist acts, including in Australia. This listing makes it a serious criminal offence, punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment for any person who provides any form of material support to Prakash, directly or indirectly. Yet the Australian government is committed to the international efforts to starve this terrorist organisation, Daesh, of foreign terrorist fighters from Australia and elsewhere, to starve it of funds, to starve it of resources, so that we can combat terrorism and keep our people safe.
In local financial news, the shekel today ended the trading week with a mixed performance due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays. Here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. And the IBA weather team says that we can expect pretty much ideal conditions this weekend with sunny blue skies and a slight rise in temperatures. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, same time, same channel, when I'll be back to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.